Hey everybody, it is Sunday morning. I just got the lights turned on and I'm already in here doing work on my waterfall tank. It started with me just looking over the plants and everything as I do when I come in here, and I noticed that the aphids were still present. Not very many, but they were definitely still there. One of the places I found them was right on the tip of this cut, looks like a little cut twig. That is the cut end of my temple plant, and there was a group of them all clustered around the cut end where the moisture was weeping out of the plant. That's what the aphids do. They basically drink the plant juices the way a mosquito would draw the blood out of an animal, and as a result they're basically stripping the nutrients and the the food and everything out of the plant, and that's why the leaves start to curl and wilt and turn colors and everything else. The plant's being sucked by vampires, basically. And so for them to be clustered around that cut end like that makes perfect sense. And so I got my spray bottle out once again and began giving everything a once-over. And I've gained a little bit of confidence since I've been doing this several times now and have not had an issue yet as far as, fish even looking distressed or anything, let alone turning up dead or anything. So I went a little crazy with the soap this morning and I sprayed everything down again really thoroughly. I was noticing some odd growth on my ajuta up here, that bugleweed, all of this stuff, and I turned it over, and sure enough, I found one or two aphids crawling around up there, so I sprayed all of that. I sprayed all this hanging creeping jenny. I sprayed all this. I even came down here and hit this water sprite here, this big one that's growing. You can see all the fronds growing everywhere. So I rolled them over. I sprayed the back sides of them, sprayed this whole area. I even spritzed this wood down with the soapy water and sprayed the plastic lining against the back. A bunch of flying bugs keep hanging out back there like they're living in a cave or something. So I gave them a good spritz, and maybe that'll get rid of those too. And on a side note, I came down here last night, and hovering around my really bright light here was a big moth. I mean, a big moth. So I have no idea where that came from, except if it was a grub that was buried deep inside one of these pieces of wood, or possibly even some of the soil that got uprooted with some of the different plants that I've grabbed from the yard and everything. A lot of times some soil came with them, and maybe a grub was in there, and being down here in the basement, the warmth, it's done its thing, and now I've got a big moth down here in the basement somewhere. So I thought about catching it and releasing it outside, but then I thought, well, that's as good as I might as well just kill it. So I just left it alone. I'll let it do its thing down here. It's not going to find a mate, but whatever. At least I'll have a moth flying around the basement. Anyway, the whole point of this video that I have yet to get to is when I started doing my water changes after putting the soap in the tank. I started doing some massive water changes, and when I picked up the hose when I was done, the first one, I noticed the water was barely coming out the end of the hose, and after closer examination I realized there was a frog stuck in the end, and it didn't quite come out the hose into the shower stall in the other room. And so I debated on what to do, and eventually I wound up just hooking the hose back up to the sink and turning the water on gently and just watching the frog move backwards all the way through the line until it spit back out in the tank. And then I did make sure I shook the hose out and everything until it came out into the water, which was, I just lifted it up and it came right out. I didn't have to force it or anything. But started doing another water change. I decided that it would probably be a good idea to do that and prevent that from happening again. And while I was kind of tinkering around, walking around, I noticed some movement in the bathroom. And when I looked in the shower stall, I noticed a frog crawling around in there. So the one got stuck, but apparently another one made it all the way through and was crawling around in the shower stall. I got a bunch of fake plants and live plants in there. It's a mess, but apparently there was a frog crawling around in all that mess. And by the time I captured him and got him back in the tank, it was actually getting kind of dry. Its skin was a little bit tacky. And that is not good for an amphibian, for their skin to dry out. And so I was able to collect it up and get it back in here, while the water's draining. I am doing another water change, so I'm going to be wrapping this up real soon because I got to start filling the tank back up. But from now on, that is definitely going to be something that gets done in this tank. And if I've got any other tanks where I'm concerned that the fish might swim up there, I've got other animals that might crawl in there or something, I now have an option of what to do, and I now know for sure that I've got a reason to do it. So there you go. Still planning on doing my video talking about this tank, its construction, how I put it together, what I'll do differently, and all that. I just feel like I already shoot so much video of this tank that I don't want to sit down and shoot another half-an-hour video just talking about this tank again. But sooner or later it'll be coming. So thanks again for watching. I will point out that over on my rapidly dwindling Patreon page, I'm down to a handful of patrons over there, but I do still post videos over there. And last night I did about 20 minutes of underwater tank cam in this tank, and it was some really fascinating stuff. And so I put the whole 20 minutes over on my Patreon page, but here on my YouTube, I'll probably release a few videos that are, you know, edited together and 5 minutes long or something like that. So either way, you'll get to see some really interesting stuff going on at the bottom of this tank. So make sure you're subscribed or check out my Patreon. Either way, there will be a link down below. Thanks for watching this one. Don't forget to subscribe. See you real soon in the next one.